How familiar are you with OSHA regulations? More importantly, how familiar is your frontline staff? Today, Liz Petersen and I will be talking about how to get your frontline workers to follow OSHA laws. Let's get into it. So, Liz, my question for you is, how can HR work with managers to actually have buy-in from these frontline staff, frontline employees to adhere to these OSHA regulations?
It's a great question. It starts with management. It starts with leadership, actually. I'll take a step back. It starts with the leadership of the organization. And really, organizations that have that workplace safety culture, that positive, proactive workplace safety culture, have their executives, their HR, their managers, and their safety leaders on the same page, all agreeing that safety is the top priority and modeling those good safety practices and encouraging reporting of safety hazards. So it's really important that the leadership team really buys in first, and that they're all on the same page, because if you have a couple managers, especially on night shifts, if they aren't safe, if they don't think safety is important, then their staff's not going to think safety is important. So it's very important that everybody be on the same page and that be an expectation of leadership and management. And then you want to think about ways to encourage employees to be involved. You want them to report things. You want them to feel comfortable reporting hazards that they see, not only just instances when they happen, but if they notice something that could be fixed. Taking initiative to report it, or just saying, hey, here's how we can fix this easily. Because a lot of times they have the knowledge of what's the easiest thing to do to fix something. So why not encourage them to report that information in and have that available to your team to make those safety team to make decisions and move forward. So talk about safety not as something we do to check the box, but we want to make sure that it's something that is done because we care about others. We emotionally care about you. We want to protect you. And that emotion is what moves the needle and creates that buy-in for the employees. When you don't control and lecture them on safety and you say, hey, this is important, we want to make sure you're confident and comfortable and trained, then that's going to help. And then, as I mentioned, the or maybe I didn't mention it, but incentivizing people who report hazards and correct them. So reward those people who come forward and say, hey, here's something that we can fix and here's how to fix it, and make that public, because the more that you recognize them in public, the more other people are going to say, hey, I could get my CEO or my executive member to recognize me and know my name if I also do this. So all those things can help. Asking for their feedback is really important as well. So there's a lot of options, but it really does start top down.
Yeah, I love the fact of equipping these managers with the necessary resources and tools. It actually points beautifully to this next slide. If it loads for me, let's put it up here. There we go. So talking about OSHA's recommended resources for managers, if we look at a couple of these, looking at capital equipment and supplies, that's a pretty clear one. Staff timesheets, training, vendor information, safety data sheets, even injury, illness data, checklist, online database, access to safety and health experts, and then OSHA's on-site consultation program. I thought that last one was really interesting. And I believe that they offer a free consultation for them to come in and audit your processes as is. Liz, my question for you is, what tools should HR provide their managers, looking at this slide here, so they can support their teams at the end of the day?
Yeah, there's a lot listed here, and it's all very important, and they really have to have access to all this information and understand it. They have to understand what it all means. I think starting off with just a general safety operations manual of some sort that they can refer to tell them where to go for things that aren't urgent, so that they, especially those late shift managers who can't just walk up to HR and be like, hey, where do I get this? Having something that kind of guides them through everything is helpful. All the signage that we can put up, there's a lot of these things that can be provided via signage. So letting people know where the safety data sheets are. Put a sign up, let them know here's where to access those. Letting them know where the processes are, or having the processes step by step laid out in front of them in their workstations or work areas is really helpful. Checklists are very helpful for managers, so that they can quickly assess, did we do all the things that we're supposed to do in this situation? Walking them through and making sure they have access to assessments, so that if there is an operational change that they have to make, they can quickly assess that operational change and determine, is there new protective equipment that they need to wear, new PPE? Is there some other safety protocols that need to happen in order for us to make this operational change that we need to do soon, if possible? So all those things are really important. But I think probably one of the things that I found, unfortunately, that happened was our late shift didn't have access to the incident report form.
Interesting. Yeah.
It was printed off in hard copy and locked in the HR office at
Interesting.
night. And so just simple things of making sure that managers have access to all these documents at night that they might need access to. So putting them electronically as well as hard copies for instant reports, and allowing employees access to those as well, making sure that they're out there so that they can complete them whenever they see an incident or have a concern.
I love that. I think it really depends on the company. I mean, as you just said, for night shift, for example, it wasn't even clear that they didn't have access until it was lived through, right? Nobody knew that they weren't going to have access because the HR door was locked. And obviously they didn't have those like timesheets, those data points to refer to. So they didn't have it until they lived through it. So it depends on the company. It depends on what's needed. We rolled out our own safety inspection management feature that kind of has all of that, like in terms of checklists, assets, audits. Depending on what your organization needs, you can cater it to exactly what those points are that you need to be covering, that you need to be regulating a little bit more, self-auditing. So yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that's a bottleneck that a lot of HR people are running into. And it's a very common issue to not have a catch-all, right? To have that customized experience. So absolutely. Are there any training or education programs that you actually recommend to ensure that staff understand the requirements and expectations surrounding OSHA?
Sure. First, I just want to say, and I meant to say this in our last question, but I missed it, was we want to get creative on the training.
Yes.
Training needs to use different media and needs to have change up of who's speaking or what they're doing. Even think about having some fun with it, making it not so dry. Gamification. I know you don't want to have distractions while they're at work and doing their job, but when they're in training, you can make it fun. And things like quizzing them and having them compete to see who all know, which team knows the most safety protocol pieces of information. You can figure out how to do that. It can be one-on-one, it could be teams, it could be whatever you want, but making those types of things fun, making them want to learn is really important, and changing it up is really important. So that's a key to the training piece for your employees. But I would say there are lots of different training and education programs out there. SHRM has one, a safety management suite that's offered in partnership with JJ Keller. So that's something to look at. It helps create the safety plans, provides audits and checklists, as well as a lot of resources on the regulations and safety data sheets. So that is certainly one that I would recommend as well.
Nice. I definitely agree with the engaging aspect of these training protocols. If the employees aren't engaged, that they're obviously not even going to retain the information to begin with. It leads me to my next question. How can HR implement safety into their workplace culture just a little bit better? I know it's not necessarily a value that a lot of people take seriously, especially frontline staff. So what can HR do to kind of embed that aspect of safety just a little bit more?
There's a lot. So the ultimate goal is to create that proactive and positive safety culture. And as I discussed when we talked about buy-in, it really is that top-down piece is really what's going to create that total buy-in culture. Sometimes HR is not going to get the full buy-in from the executive team. They can still do things. They shouldn't just give up and say, well, we're done. They can still do a lot, and it just might not be as consistently supported. So you have to be a little bit more rigid in pushing for this and explaining the reasons why it's so important. Some of the things that HR should do is budget line for safety. That's definitely needs to be there. You have to do the training. You have to have ways to fix hazards and have a budget to do those things, because if that is put on the back burner and not fixed right away, you're creating more of a concern for a potential OSHA violation in the future. You can recruit and screen for people who are safety conscious. So that can certainly be questions that are added for your recruiters to ask of all employees, even your leaders, as you bring them on. Consider asking those questions and making sure that you are considering whether a leader is going to be supportive of being safety first in their approach. Onboarding, of course, you have to start off with your new hires. First thing, you have to make sure that they feel confident before they start doing their job, that they understand the safety protocols. And it's really hard if they come in to onboarding and they're given training on safety and it's kind of with an eye roll or really fast, like they should know all this. So I'm just going to go through it really quick. A lot of people know it. They might be bored out of their, because they've gone over a lot of times, but there are people who don't, or they forget something, or your process is a little different. So don't assume that new hires understand and will work safely. Make sure that you provide that type of training throughout the process.
Thank you so much for watching that segment from our webinar on how to prevent OSHA lawsuits. If you'd like to watch the full webinar, click this video here and be sure to subscribe for more content like this.